Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests. 1963. If you ask most people that were around in 1963 what was the most important single event of that year, 9 people out of 10 would say that was the year that Kennedy was assassinated. Well, actually, they'd be wrong, because that was only the second most important thing that happened that year. It was 1963, I was born. My parents were convinced right from day one that I'd be a very special child. When I asked them later on why this was the case, they told me the story of what happened the night I was born. For some obscure reason that no one can understand, all the hospitals within an 8-mile radius of where I live were full. There was nowhere for me to go. They scrambled around desperately and finally I had to go to Kensington. So I got driven to Kensington. I was born there. And as it happens, that hospital is the one where all the royal family have their children. So my parents concluded, yeah, this is a special guy born in the royal hospital. I grew up in Hackney. I'd actually typically invite you to go and see where I live, but fortunately, where it all got demolished to make space for the Olympic Park, it was a terrible place, but it all got wiped out, thankfully. When I was young, I went to a school called Gainsborough School, which was a school I really enjoyed. I really had fun. It was a great primary school, and I really enjoyed it. There was lots of time to play, lots of time to mess around. And I found out later on why that was the case, because as it turned out, Gainsborough School was the second worst school in all of Hackney. But luckily, my parents were very focused and made sure I did all the studying. And thanks to them, I was one of the 5 children that left at 11 that could read and write their own names. So as a reward for that towering academic achievement, I moved to another school in Tower Hamlets. So this was actually the best school in Tower Hamlets. I know that Tower Hamlets isn't exactly famous for having good schools, but this is actually a really good school. And it prepared me for the next stage of my journey. Because at the age of 14, we moved to Nigeria. For me, that was a fairly major change. I went from a boys-only day school to a mixed boarding school. And it was an excellent school as well. And over and above the academics, I learned 3 very important skills. The first thing I found out how to do was to cut down 6-foot-high grass in the blazing sun with my bare hands and a machete. Every afternoon we had to do that. The second thing I learned to do was actually learn to spot snakes in the grass from 100 yards away, because you have to run to get a snake. And finally, I learned how to steal mangoes from farmers, nearby farmers, without getting caught. That was, once again, that's how we fed ourselves. So I'm going to do a bit of a fast forward now, moving on from here, because as you can tell, my life is quite long. So I'm going to skip past my university, drinking, starting work, drinking, having kids, drinking. So you can kind of get the point there. So I'm going to fast forward to today when I got a phone call. And this phone call was from my brother. Not the only phone call I got in 30 years, but it was a very important one. I remember this one. Because he called to tell me that my mother had a stroke. So we obviously went as fast as we could to Nigeria, went to see her, and what we saw really shocked us. She was there, lying. She was kind of weak, grey, frail, couldn't speak, couldn't walk. And for us that was a shock, because we remembered her when we were young and she was chasing us around and all that, and it was a real shock to us. I also remembered at that point that 15 years before that, my father died. We thought it was natural causes at the time, but he was actually only 60. Then another thought entered my mind. When I was born, I was actually born with no grandparents. All 4, all dead, all natural causes. So it was time for me to do something. When I got to London, the first thing I did was I set up an appointment with the doctor, medical, because I've never done one of those before ever in my life, but now there was a good reason. So I went through, did all the tests, and then I asked the doctor, I said, "Doctor, what do you think?" This is not good. So I said, "What do you mean not good? Be specific." Well, you have high blood pressure, you have high cholesterol, you are in the bottom 25% of your health for your age group, and you are clinically obese. And I said, "Is that good or bad?" And he said, "You nincompoop." Do something about this. So I said, "What do I do?" And he said, "Well, why don't you try running or something, run a mile." And I'm like, "A mile? Are you mad? I can hardly run 20 meters. But by the time I got home, I thought, you know what, I'm going to try and do this. So I went online, signed up for a race. So this is nice and easy. It was actually the London Marathon. So my logic was quite simple. If I did a simple race, I wouldn't take it seriously. But with the marathon, if you don't do a marathon properly, you die. So I trained, and I actually finished it, which was a big surprise to me. And in the post-race delirium drink, I signed up foolishly for a triathlon. I say foolishly because at the time I didn't know how to swim, and I hadn't ridden the bike since I was 14 when I crashed into a tree and almost killed myself. But once again, crazy training, and now, as of last year, I actually did do a triathlon, and I've done 4 so far. I'd like to recommend triathlons to everyone. They're brilliant sports. They're a great mix across your sort of mind and body, and excellent way to make friends. And what I'd like everyone to do, if they can, is after this speech, go out and get yourself a pair of running shoes, a bike, go to the pool, provided the force is right next to the pump. Thank you.